Hello, I'm Greg Dixon with Storyvan TV and here with Keanna O'Quinn. I missed your name already. Keanna O'Quinn. And
That's right.
her company is called Honey and Vinyl, and they do interesting things with music. So, could you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. Honey and Vinyl. Well, first of all, before talking about Honey and Vinyl, thank you so much, Greg, for even having me on today.
Yeah,
It's really a pleasure to meet you and learn about everything, all the great work that you're doing with I don't know if it's is it considered workshopping, um um creating what is it? Creating workshops or creating curriculum for people to train others in
yeah,
whatever their
yeah.
specialized
In
field is.
one of the hats is I create online courses and help other people create online courses. But this here, we Bonnie and I have been interviewing people for Storyvan TV for quite a while, and the main criteria is they just have to be interesting. It happens that it
Well,
happens
that's
that
a compliment.
you and I have quite a overlapping career related to music, because one of the things I've
Yeah,
done is I've played in various bands.
yeah.
It just sounds like you've taken it to a whole different level than what I have, and also you have an interesting spin on it. So maybe you can
Yeah,
tell us a bit about
yeah.
that.
So Honey
Yeah,
and Vinyl started as a band, actually.
yeah,
We were represented by a large agency out of New York, and we traveled the world performing for high-end private events. So if you think about the movie The Wedding Singer, it started pretty much as that 10x. And after doing that for some time, it developed from being a band to a brand. And so I we legitimized ourselves as a company in 2013, and um, it's fascinating because even talking about it now, 7 8 years later, I it's always like, transforming into something new. But essentially, we provide live music solutions for high end private events around the world and perform as a band. And over time, through performing, I began to kind of glean that there were some things missing in events and wanted to bring a more mindful approach to how music is brought to gatherings. And then that morphed into how music is brought to all environments and even uh, brand voices. And so then Sonic Sommelier was born.
yeah. I think that's a great term, Sonic Sommelier.
Thank
I
you.
The last time I was behind a bar mixing, serving wine, I suggested mixing white and red to make rosé. So that's why I'm not doing it anymore. So, so
Well, yeah, it's actually Sonic Sommelier is similar to how, a wine sommelier pairs wine with, fine cuisine. We pair music with life's finest moments.
yeah, no, that's great.
Thank you.
So what goes into that? What do you go into tuning the music for the event? Like that involves a lot of background into the people who are involved and what they're trying to do. Is that how it works?
Well, I would say that it's a gumbo, actually. It's, part intuition and experience along with a bit of science. So there's been a lot of research into how music can impact our mood and impact our productivity, how we connect with others and the environment. But then there's been more fine-tuned, pun intended, research on how music can influence how we perceive taste. And so, how crunchy something is, or how salty or bitter or
Hmm.
sweet something tastes. And so, we kind of infuse all of that into how we approach music, and we incorporate design, what's in the room, what are the colors, what's the floral
Yeah.
design, how many people are attending, what's the purpose of the gathering or the event. And we bring all of those things together to curate a sonic experience so that it elevates the experience and is a full sensorial experience, so to speak.
Yeah, so going back to the science business, it's kind of is what you're saying is, let's say people are going sitting down for an event and a dinner, and then there's music in the background, say, let's say this Nickelback or the, or the Temptations or something, and
Right,
and
right.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if you know Nickelback
I
is the
do,
band.
I do. So basically, it's my job to come in and say, "Hey, this Nickelback song may not be the right choice for that, steak tartare, but it may be a better choice depending on what's happening with the
Yeah,
bass and with the pacing of the song and the lyrical
yeah,
content. It may go better with, that fish, option." So
yeah.
it's an intricate, meticulous, really, really fun way to approach what it is that we do.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that it's innovative.
Well, I think it is, and so I think so. Somebody may be sitting down and they're eating something, and they're not even aware of it, but their impression of the food is different because of the music in the background, and
Absolutely,
or in
absolutely.
the foreground, or at the whole experiences. And I think for most people, in a way, music is the soundtrack of their lives, right? So there's
That's right.
you could say we when I think probably between 15 and 20, if you listen to a lot of music, most of the time that's kind of sticks with
Mhm,
people for their whole lives.
mhm.
And it all
Absolutely.
it takes is a tune to bring back a whole memory, and maybe even this they can recreate a meal or something out of what they heard. I just, oh, that's the first time I had I had coffee with
That's
somebody, and
right.
then then that's how it all brings it back. It's really quite amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the cornerstone of what we do. People, our target demographic, is typically spending lots and lots of time and energy and money planning, these events. And whenever you're planning something for a special occasion, whether it be for a birthday or whether it's a wedding or a bar mitzvah or just, a seated dinner, you're doing that because you want to create a memory. And
yeah,
so when the sonic environment complements the experience that you're trying to provide, then it kind of takes it over the top so that your guests and you can associate, that memory with a song later on. And so we're doing that intentionally, whereas it's been happening in
yes,
our lives, like you said, all the time, but we're
yes,
being
yeah,
more intentional about it.
very good. So you relocated from the New York area to Los Angeles?
Yes, yes, I
So what
did. I got here in March. No, I got here in February of 2021.
yeah. What inspired that move?
So we are a global brand anyway,
Mhm.
but we've been East Coast based. I moved to the East Coast in 2008, and I didn't go into the music and events industry until I believe 2010, 2011. And we've done so well on the East Coast, and I wanted to expand, and kind of get a feel for, this region of the country. I think that there's a really big difference, even when it comes down to, um, now I'm putting on my entrepreneur hat, even when it comes down to like marketing a brand, especially something like a music service, live music.
Okay, yeah.
LA has a whole different energy than a
Yeah,
fast-paced New York that just has that energy, that electricity all the time. LA is a bit more laid back. It's traditionally sunny, year round, especially Southern LA. I'm in the Valley,
Yeah.
sorry, Southern California. And so I wanted to experience how that could inform how I do what I do, and bring in a bit more, just diversify how I
Yeah.
approach music so that we could bring magic in a different way. So yeah, it was really to kind of explore a different coast and to see, how that could influence how we do what we do.
Yeah. How does the song go? Nashville, or like Los Angeles is like Nashville, only with a tan.
Oh, I've never heard that. I like
Yeah,
that.
I have to track down the song. It's kind of I think his last name is Palmer. I can't remember it. Woody Allen said the only cultural advantage to Los Angeles is that you could turn right on a red light. But there we go.
I'm not gonna lie, Greg, that is probably one of my top 5 favorite things about living in California
You
is
can
being
turn right
able
on
to
a red light.
on right. Yeah, I'm originally from Chicago, and so
Yes.
living in New York for 12 years, it's like, okay, this does not make sense. We have all this traffic,
Yeah.
it's not really a driving city, it's a walking city. So I understand the logic behind, wanting to manage the drivers in New York. That pedestrians are, number one, and kind of should be everywhere, but it's really nice to be able
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
look and then turn.
Yeah. So while we're on this topic of pedestrians and traffic, I was driving in Quebec City, and I came up to an intersection, and all of the lights went red at one time. Says what? Anyway, so the way that goes is they all of the lights go red, so the pedestrians can go kitty corner, they can go anywhere, they can just walk
Ah,
anywhere across
yes.
the intersection,
Mhm,
and then it
mhm.
comes up, and then you can drive. But I sat there and I think I stopped and I studied that. Says, what is going on with this?
Yeah, I
Yes.
live I live near a mall, and we have a light like that where the pedestrians can cross, diagonally. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I think it works pretty well.
Yeah.
And then in in Europe they have all the roundabouts. They drive around at 80 miles an hour, and here in North America they make roundabouts to try to slow people down, right? So,
Here in my neighborhood, they have these, like, dips instead of speed bumps. You'll
oh
be
yeah,
going down a straightaway, and all of a sudden, if you're paying attention, which you should be because it's a residential area, there's, like, these dips, and if you're going too fast, then you're in for a surprise.
well, right now I'm actually in a Class C motorhome, and we were driving through Colorado, and it's got off the main road a bit, and they have the little dips. It's for drainage, right? If they have little
Mhm.
rains,
It is,
so
but I also think it's
yeah,
for, 'cause it
but
doesn't rain that much in Southern California.
no, but whoa, we hit it way too fast. I think there was stuff flying. It's quite a thing. And, some all speed bumps are not created equal. There are some speed bumps where you can't even go slow enough to go over them safely. And
Absolutely.
and then others, if you time it right, you can get a nice amount of air. So,
So I have a question for you.
yeah.
What do you listen to? What kind of music do you listen to when you're driving long distances?
It varies quite a lot. I have, when we were traveling, we listened to an awful lot of George Strait. I'm a bit of a classic rock person, but I also have played and have been in classical orchestras and appreciate that. Um, I was in the Columbia CD club, and for a while there, I got almost nothing but female vocalists, right? Alicia Keys and
I
and
remember Columbia,
yeah,
yeah.
Mariah Carey and Katie Lang. Uh,
Uh-huh.
so a little bit of everything. I kind of like, speaking of Chicago, I liked Chicago cool jazz. I
Mm.
played drums in a repertoire band, and we played a lot of those, that kind of feeling. So um, yeah,
Is
not
there a certain genre that you feel like, do you notice a difference in your mood, in your, attention span, in your speed, depending upon which genre or artist you're listening to?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it depends on what it is. Certainly, there's some kind of upbeat classic rock and country tunes that seem to be more for driving kind of thing. But I uh, I got stuck in ice, rain, and fog in Ontario one time, and I had it basically took me all night to get where I was going, and I just found the most laid back soft jazz station I could find. I
Nice,
just sort of said I
nice.
wanted just something mellow. I was more or less just driving along, and there were tail lights in front of me, and I was just going to follow that, and hope I didn't end up in their driveway. So,
So I have one more question. I read
okay,
in um, I read this morning an article that said that the people of Virginia were very unfortunate. The I-95 was backed up for about 50 miles, like a 50-mile stretch on the highway, and overnight they couldn't drive because the highway was a blanket of ice. And so they essentially just had to sleep in their cars on the highway. I read that one senator he was on his way to DC. He was stuck in his car on the highway for about 19 hours.
yeah,
So if you said your wife's name's Bonnie, right?
yes, yeah.
You and Bonnie were stuck on the highway overnight. Um, what would you listen to in those conditions?
Uh, I actually in those conditions I probably try to find a public radio NPR station
Mm.
and listen to a combination of music and talk. I have actually been stuck. We recently when we we were flooded out of Merritt, British Columbia. We came back down through the back roads, through the eastern side of Washington State and Georgia or Oregon. Ended up going through a little bit of Idaho and Nevada, and we stopped out to visit Bonnie's sister and Bishop, and then we got stuck in a really bad accident. And we were there. We waited 6.5 hours, I think, before we got
Oh
on it. And I've been
no.
stuck 8.5 hours. And I kind of said, well, it's just an opportunity to talk and listen to some radio. So yeah,
That's the spirit. I mean, it
well,
sounds like instinctively we kind of know, what kind of music will soothe us or help us to pass the time or, create a more cheerful environment. And
yeah,
so I think there's a little bit of Sonic Sommelier in everybody if we tune
everybody.
into it.
So I spent quite a bit of time with a native artist, and he would paint with headphones on, and he liked Metallica.
Ooh, what kind of stuff did he paint?
Well, they're very native symbology, and some of them were very peaceful, but he had a few that with thunderstorms and lightning and spiritual things
Wow,
happening
that's
everywhere. But
really
that was a
cool.
Metallica stuff, and I actually
That's
find
cool.
I find Led Zeppelin is soothing actually.
Mm. That's not the first time I've heard someone say that actually. And I wonder if it's because of the bass and, the bottom. There's something really soothing about like really, really deep um instrumentation. And
Yeah,
so I can I can I can understand that. Absolutely.
yeah. You're talking about the soothing bass. I had an experience. I went to see Lindsey Buckingham in
Oh,
Vancouver at a little small club called the Commodore Ballroom, and relatively small place, and its main claim to fame is it's got a bouncy dance floor, right?
oh,
But
that's cool.
it was just so insanely loud. My ears hurt, and I had the tickets to go see Roger Waters the next day, right? With my brother, and I said, "Oh my God, I don't know if I could stand 2 really loud days in a row." So I almost canceled, but I went, and it was in a much larger stadium, but they had the the and being Roger Waters is pretty heavy on the bass, but
Yeah.
it was so well tuned that like my hearing problems went away instantly. It's just like I felt, oh, it was just like healing
I
almost. And it
love
was just
that. I love
yeah,
that. It's
yeah,
interesting you say that because that's something that, I encounter quite a bit as a Sonic Sommelier, as a band leader, is that a lot of times bands don't understand not just EQing, making sure the levels are right, but volume is so huge and it can literally ruin a person's experience if it's too loud. And that's whether you're having a meal, that's whether you're
oh
networking,
yeah,
that's whether
yeah,
you're actually going just to enjoy the music.
eh,
So I have an interesting story. We performed at a museum in New York
okay,
for it was an engagement party and it was very large. Like they bought out the entire museum and it's really small. It's called the Frick Museum and
okay,
it's a historical landmark. And it used to be someone's home, and so they're very, very, very anal about preserving the everything in the museum, from the artwork to even the walls. Like the walls have a special like textile wallpaper that has been preserved for hundreds of years, or at
yes,
least 100 years. And we were told that we couldn't go over a certain dB. A dB
okay,
is short
yeah,
for decibels, and it's a measure of volume. For your listeners who don't know, I know you know. But if we went louder than that, it would destroy the wallpaper.
yes,
And so if the volume, if music's volume is that loud that it could destroy something like wallpaper, we know that it can be harmful to, us as humans and our overall quality of hearing. And so I'm of the mind that if it's not music, then it's just noise. So I'm very
yeah.
anti noise.
And Bonnie has a story. She saw Sade, and it was so
Oh, I
insanely
love
loud.
Sade.
It's so insanely loud. She had to stuff stuff in her ears, and I think that she might have after. And like, there's no
I'm
reason.
shocked.
There's no reason for that, right?
I'm
And
shocked to hear that.
yeah, and I've been to a couple. I went to, when I was quite young. Went with my cousin to see the Guess Who in Calgary, and you had a glass of pop or something, and there's tides happening. It was so loud and everything's
Wow,
vibrating. And then I've gone to see probably the best produced concert I ever saw was Dire Straits, and but they worked at it. They brought their own sound system in, and they had
nice.
like it was a like a hockey arena, but they had a sound engineer on the floor, and they had one on each of the upper levels, and they tuned it, and it was like as close as to getting a high fidelity stereo sound in a
Nice.
in a an arena, which is tough at any time. But
Absolutely. Absolutely. But that's what it requires. I mean, people, like I said, about, even in events, people are spending their money to have a memorable experience. They want to remember it for the right reasons, not
yeah,
because,
for the right, yeah. Yeah, and I've gone to a few, like little outdoor festivals, and I think that the sound engineer is deaf, right? They,
a lot of times they are.
yeah, like I played in a band. Well, I played drums. I played with a band one time where I knew one of the guys, and their drummer couldn't make it. So actually the drummer asked me to come and play, and one of the guitarists there, he had a. You're talking about like his um, iPod or his phone. He says, yeah, he just had that at full volume all of the time when he was listening to music, and he played the guitar insanely loud all of the time. Which
I've
is
experienced that.
and I had the best lesson I got when I was in high school. We had our band opened up for Trooper, like it was and at a high school dance. That's before they actually took off, and
Yeah.
the sound engineer had us play, and he really took the time to tell us just to play at a comfortable level, and that so the sound level is so that you can hear each other, and says don't worry, says I'll have the first people in the first row with their hair going back like this, but you don't have to kill yourself, right? You know, if the lunatics want to stand in front of the speakers, that's up to them. You know, so,
Absolutely, and it's funny enough, that's what happened at the museum when we, every now and again, a museum staff member would come into the room with the dB meter so that
yeah,
they could measure how loud we were so that they could preserve, all of the artifacts in the room, including
yeah,
this fancy antiquated wallpaper.
yeah,
And the planner and the host or the client kept asking us to get louder, just get louder. And so every now and again, we'd bring it up just a little bit, and the staff would come in with that, carrying that dB meter,
yeah,
and they'd look at us and they'd go to our sound engineer and say, you guys have to turn it down. And it's my pleasure to not play at max volume. But what ended up happening by the end of the night is all of the young people eventually migrated to right in front of like these huge speakers, and they
yes,
just stood there and had their own little
yeah,
rager for the duration of our performance, because we weren't, it got to a point where I'm just like, we can't keep, ping ponging this and listening to the
no,
client and then listening to the staff. We're just going to listen to the staff, respect this venue, this historical institution,
yeah,
and the client, his guests got what they needed standing right in front of the speaker
yeah,
with
yeah,
their
no,
hair blowing back, like you said.
everybody, yeah, everybody can find a spot. Like antique
That's right.
wallpaper aside, often it's not the volume levels, it's the EQ and the
Yes,
balance. You know,
yes,
like it can be
absolutely.
really quite loud and nobody notices it's loud if it's well mixed and well balanced. And
That's
then
true.
other times it's you know out of balance and people perceive it as being a problem. Like I played one time. I've done quite a bit of sound engineering myself, and but I was playing in the band, and I invited a friend to come over, and we had a guitarist who tended to play pretty loud, and I
Mhm.
knew we were in for mutually assured destruction when he went over and told the guitarist to turn up. And
Oh,
yeah, and the problem was actually the keyboard player tended to play insanely loud, but it's a different kind of sound. It just kind of
absolutely,
permeates, right? And he didn't
absolutely.
perceive it as being a problem with the keyboard sound. It was you know, the guitarist, and I it just got to be bad.
That's
So
typically what happened. We I work with some of the, in New York, you have the creme de la creme, the best
yeah,
musicians from,
yeah,
around the world. And it didn't change the fact that they're I don't know if they're just programmed to compete with one another as far as being heard. I don't think they intended to be loud, but as a rule of thumb, I just always had the drummer start out with playing with brushes. How do you
yeah.
feel about brushes? Because I've yet to work with a drummer that's in love with the idea of
Oh,
playing with
well,
brushes.
well, for one, I don't like making myself deaf, and often I've been playing with kind of amateur groups and in small venues or just in the basement or something, and so I almost always play with the plastic, the blast sticks,
Okay,
like
yeah.
those.
Mhm.
They're kind of a little heavier than but and so I don't. But you know, I really there are times when you just want to get the sticks out and really
Yeah,
whack, but
yeah.
that's not necessarily my style all of the time, and 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 people appreciate that I can sort of fit the volume level and the style to what we're playing.
It's
But yeah,
definitely an important skill, and not everybody has it.
yeah, but yeah, there's certain drummers who just have you know it's 11 or 0. Yeah,
11 exactly, and my drummer is amazing, but it got to the point where if at any point in time the music, you know, seemed too loud, it made more sense to me to ask the drummer to come down first, because like you said, depending it's sometimes the quality of the sound. And so it isn't that the drummer is loud, it's just that the sound that the snare makes is very different from the sound that
yeah,
the keys make. So if the keyboardist is loud, you know, you may not notice it if the drummer, if it's a snare heavy song, you may just
Yeah.
assume that it's the drummer. And so I find that sometimes if you just ask the most obvious instrument, which is usually in my mind the guitarist or drums,
Yeah.
if you ask them to come down a little, then the
Yeah.
other instrumentalists just naturally kind of bring it
Yeah.
down as
Pick
well.
pick the largest, the biggest offender.
Exactly.
Like, we had
Exactly.
one guitarist, he's actually not bad now, but he used to want to play so loud. I used to say, "We'll just strap the amp to his head." Uh, but we would play gigs, and he would have him with his, like, little, I think he had a roller, but something like a Fender Twin. We would aim it at him, right straight at his head and
That's
away
smart.
from everything else, and so he could make
That's
himself
smart.
happy. He just you couldn't talk to him about the sound levels, right? And
Yeah.
and I used to sing in a choir, and I often arrange sound, and there'd be a variety of drummers come to, session drummers come and play, and one felt like the church was really bright and loud, so any drums at any level tended to be overwhelming anyway. But he really wanted a monitor for his bass drum microphone, so I actually arranged, just basically put a mic in his bass drum, and a little monitor with just his bass drum sound to come back. He wanted to hear himself, basically. That's what he wanted.
Yeah,
So I had
yeah,
the bass drum sound coming back at him, but virtually none of it came through the front of house
nice.
speakers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's another thing to consider are the acoustics of the room. Sometimes nobody's loud and it's the acoustics of the room. If it's in,
Oh yeah.
weird shape, or if you're in a corner, or
Yeah.
um depending on what, the walls are made of, if you're outside,
Yeah.
all those are major, major factors.
So I fell in love with the Bose system.
That's my
Yeah.
favorite. That is
Yeah.
my all-time favorite.
Yeah, because even like the band I was in, I ended up leaving the band, but I did sound for them, and it was a big, like a 10-piece country band that was
Nice.
on the edge of too loud all of the time, and I would get two Bose towers, and it never failed to, make the vocals clear over top of the band,
Yes.
no matter how chaotic.
Yes.
It's just,
Yes.
and I don't know if you saw that Adele thing up in the La
I only
Plaza.
saw pieces of it. I'm very anti-hype, so if people are like, "Oh my
Yeah,
god, this thing is amazing," I
yeah,
kind of wait to watch
yeah.
it.
I don't know if it was Bose, but it was something like a Bose system they had spread out through the whole thing, right?
Ah.
Yeah, and Pat Metheny, I saw Pat Metheny perform. He does these things with automated instruments, right? They're computer generated,
Yeah.
but
Mhm,
it gets the drums that,
mhm.
they actually have
I've
physical
seen
things.
performances like
And
that,
his
yeah.
thing is every little instrument has its own Bose tower, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And I like the fact that, I can walk in, basically two Bose towers, and my and a mixer on my backpack, and he could do pretty
Yes,
much
yes.
whatever you needed to
More
do.
often than not, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
even the small compact, I one time in Vancouver they have a thing called Granville Island Market, and they often have musicians playing outside. And I just
Mhm.
stepped out of the car, and there's this, like, exquisite acoustic guitar sound and vocals, and I says, "Wow, that sounds great!" And it was just some guy with a Bose tower with a microphone plugged in and his guitar plugged in. It's just,
Yeah,
yeah,
I did an event in San Francisco, in November, and it was a series. It was like a wedding weekend, and so
yeah,
it started with the rehearsal dinner, which was they had the rehearsal and then the dinner, and the dinner was on a chartered boat.
okay,
It was fairly small. It was really nice, but they did not have a quality speaker system. In
yes,
fact, they had one of those karaoke speakers. So they hired us to curate a playlist for them. And so we hired one of our best DJs to go through, and it was the bride was Nigerian and the husband was Jamaican. Her older sister was throwing the the entire wedding, and she's like an accomplished attorney. And then the parents were also very, very conservative. So already it was really interesting to curate a playlist that was going to kind of meet everybody's, um, music preferences. But when to see that boat and see that all they had was a karaoke speaker, I almost jumped off. Like I almost just took a dive. So I step outside of the boat and I see that, the this particular boat was for tours. And he's giving a tour of, Alcatraz, and he's passing all these, really great historical points. And he's speaking into the speaker. And so I go and do a little investigating, and I see outside that there's a Bose like over top of the what do you call it? The cabin, the what do you
Right.
call it? Yeah. So
Okay.
beautiful little, it's not a tower, but it's a beautiful Bose speaker and it looks
Yeah.
new. And I
Yes.
say, sir, when he gets off the mic, I kind of test, sir, how do we connect to that beautiful Bose speaker there? And he's like, I have no idea, honey. Sorry. And I just felt so deflated because it's like, we went through all of this hard work to create this, beautiful playlist for them, and the quality of the um projection is because you're using the
Oh,
crappiest speaker that you could have
yeah.
possibly bought. So, and then later on, so for the wedding, we provided live music. We had a couple of classically trained violinists do the ceremony. And then we had a DJ come later on, but they also had a dinner party at the home on the second
Right.
night. The planner calls me last minute and she says, hey, I know that I didn't ask you to provide any sort of, AV, no speakers. In fact, I specifically asked you not to. But if you could on your way over, maybe swing by somewhere and pick up a speaker. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? Thankfully, I had already kind of you know, made some contacts in the area to be able to rent any audio equipment that I may have needed. Just I always like to be prepared,
Yeah.
under promise, over deliver. So it wasn't an issue. I swung by. This really great vendor has a shop there, and I picked up, of course, a Bose. I get to the home. The dinner party has already, well, it's almost about to start. And she says, oh, I forgot to text you and tell you that you didn't need to pick it up. We're just going to use their, what is it called? Not the Google speaker. They're the speakers that everybody has in their
Oh,
homes right now that you can
sure.
speak.
The
What
yes,
is it? It's
Alexa or something, or
something like that. Yeah, she's like,
Nest,
"Oh,
or
we're just gonna use the Google speaker." And I was like, "Are you insane? No, we're not." We had
yeah,
that incident on the boat yesterday. I wanna make sure that we provide this client with the best quality. It's a beautiful home, let's give them top notch. And so we went with the Bose, and it was
yeah,
the difference was
yeah.
very, very noticeable.
You should almost have one in the car for emergencies at all times.
Yes.
So we had we've had a number of experiences with sound systems over the years. We used to play at festivals, and usually the sound was not that great. So one time we played um, uh, a little gig down in Robson Square. We rented something, and you know what? It's the one time we had a couple of really top musicians come and see us, and the sound system didn't work at all. So we're
Ooh,
outside basically doing band stuff a cappella.
oh my
And then the
gosh.
other, we used to go to a festival up on the Sunshine Coast, and the sound system at the festival was fabulous, but they asked us to perform in the hotel. Like we were staying, gave us free stay room and board there, and then we go up and play, and we asked the funny thing is the guy who is arranging it used to be in the band, and he promised us that there would be a sound system. And of course, I had a habit. I hadn't even started really playing the guitar, but I was always packing extra gear. I was playing drums at the time, but I had a little tiny guitar amp and a little monitor speaker that I just threw in the car and took along. And anyway, turns out there was nothing at all. So we rummaged through the back room and we found something like an old stereo system that we rigged up for the for the speakers going forward, and then we used my little monitor, 10-inch monitor, and my guitar amp for the monitor for the 10-piece band. You
Oh,
know,
wow.
it was just
You know,
yeah,
that works sometimes. I mean, I'm working with a sound engineer in San Francisco again, actually, and
yeah,
he suggested that for this particular cocktail hour, it's just going to be guitar bass duo, but the guest count I believe is like 200, and it's outdoors. And he said, let's cut down on equipment. Let's just use their monitor, as their sound system. I think it'll be fine. I think, you know, it'll be just enough. And I'm like, okay, I trust you. Go for it. So sometimes that's just enough.
sometimes it's enough, but if you don't know what it is going into it, it's really hard to tell. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I used to, I had it, like somebody had, I was packing a guitar along as well. I don't know why. I wasn't even really even playing it, but just just as a spare. And at any given time, we've used the guitar cord, or the tuner, or this little amp. So all this little junk packing around is saved our bacon a few times, right? So
Preparation is key.
yeah.
It's like if you
So
stay
you were
ready, you don't have to get ready.
stay ready. So speaking of ready, I think you weren't probably ready for the global lockdown and the pandemic.
Who was ready for that, Greg? I mean,
No,
it's funny because I'm grateful because when I created Honey and Vinyl, and even in venturing into Sonic Sommelier, we were already approaching music in a mindful way. And as
yeah,
far as events are concerned, with the pandemic, people still wanted to gather and celebrate safely when certain sanctions were lifted. But it kind of it brought people face to face with what is really important to them. And so as opposed to having all the bells and whistles and 20-piece bands and high energy dance songs, people kind of got in tune with themselves, and especially with weddings, because in 2020 and 2021, that was our main clientele, and they scaled back quite a bit because they began to ask themselves, okay, well, do we actually need to have, a 150-person wedding? Do we
yeah,
really know all 150 of these people or all 200 of these people? And so we did a lot more intimate performances, and it was perfect because it was right in alignment with who we are anyway. I mean,
yeah,
again, because I've been in this industry for so long and I started out performing with large party bands, we have that ability, that skill in our arsenal. So we can do huge, pretty much every genre. We can do all the dancing and, pyrotechnics and all that stuff. But who we are at our core is, a band that really loves music and likes to um, bring music, like I said, in a mindful way. And so we got the opportunity to really tap into who we are as a brand, and it helped us to
yeah,
connect with our client base even deeper, even more deeply, I guess you could say. So
yeah,
we've been really fortunate to still be able to um, work throughout the pandemic. And I think now this iteration of things um, is different because I feel like I feel like people are kind of coming to a place of like, okay, how long is this going to be going on? Because we thought this is going to be for this period of time, and now it looks like it's going to stretch, a little bit longer. Uh,
yeah. Maybe to 2030. I don't know.
yeah, so I'm curious as to how sustainable live, large live events will
Yeah,
be for much longer, to be honest with you.
yeah. You mentioned that you're starting to do some smaller uh, dinner kind of events, smaller groups,
Yeah,
and that's where the sommelier thing comes in, right?
absolutely. Yes, my newest brainchild is, still wanting to provide people with experiences. I mean, that's why we're here. Life, we wanna touch and taste and hear and feel and, you know, connect with each other and create memories. That part's not going to go away, pandemic or no pandemic. And so, finding a way to continue the trend of gathering safely and intimately in smaller numbers, but also collaborating with chefs and spirit brands and wines and um, to create an experience that's full sensorial and something that people feel as though they're not missing out on anything. In fact, they're
Yeah,
kind of like zeroing in on the reason that we kind of all come together anyway.
yeah. I've been to a few themed dinners, sort of
Oh, tell me about that.
like a white dinner, a red dinner, or something, or
Uh-huh.
maybe a Mexican thing where everybody comes wearing, in alignment with the theme, and the food and the music all match up together. So you're, I think you'll be very successful with that.
Thank
To-
you. Thank you
Yeah,
so much. I'm looking forward to exploring because, I think that my partner tells me all the time, he says, I don't think that you're just a band leader. I don't think that you're just an entrepreneur. I think that you're kind of a planner and you've been kind of running from that. But because there is a lot of planning that goes into music curation and performing and styling and logistics, like in
yeah.
performing with a band, it's not that you just show up and perform, you know.
No, it's an awful lot of planning, and
Yes,
for any event, and
absolutely.
and I might even call you an experienced engineer. So you're,
Ooh, I
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
because you're
So
crafting a
I
whole
like that.
experience, right? Which
I
is,
like that.
and getting involved with the ambiance and the meal and the drinks and the wine and the music all fitting together. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
And you
so
mentioned your, movies and how I think you mentioned movies or just the music being the soundtrack to our lives, and it made me
yes,
think about movies and how the way we experience movies would not be the same if the soundtrack, wasn't in the background. Sometimes the music drives the entire, plot of a movie. So,
y- yes,
uh,
yes. Actually, sometimes if you turn the sound off, the movie disappears. Like you like
completely
you
disappears.
realize if you turn the sound off and all you have is sort of, it can be just random images. But if you get a combination with a really good um, for, cinematographer with fabulous
Yes,
images and music, but the music is just a huge part of that.
that's right.
Doo-doo,
That's right.
doo-doo,
Mhm,
doo-doo,
mhm.
doo-doo. People it's just people hear those notes and they have
That's
whatever
right.
the reaction to the movie was. It's there.
Yes.
They're back
Yes,
there,
very much
and
so.
yeah, yeah. And like for one of them, like Katrina and the Waves, Walking on Sunshine. I remember when that came out. That had a huge impact, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's one of
things.
the songs we used to start the parties with is "Walking on Sunshine." That's a fan favorite.
Yeah, yeah. And so you can't hardly resist that, really. It's
You can't.
infectious.
Absolutely not, and that's the point, that's the point. I mean, the pacing of it, the lyrical content, um, it's just a feel-good song, and I think, I was thinking before we started the interview, um, I reached out to ask if, you could give me an idea of some of the questions that you might wanna ask, and I started to wonder if you'd ask me how Sonic Sommelier is different from something like Spotify, where
Okay.
they curate these, playlists based on mood, and
Yes.
I think that's one of the most genius things that a streaming service could do. But I started to think about how, as much as I love tech, and as helpful as I think algorithms have been to us, especially throughout this pandemic, our social media accounts and our Google accounts know exactly what to put in front of us at what point in
Yeah.
time. Um, they know what our interests are. And that's really important. And I think that it's improved our quality of life as humans and as consumers. At the same time, I think that, again, back to being humans, there's nothing quite compares to the human touch. And so when I think about music that's curated by, streaming services, as great as they are, I think the thing that's missing is the idea that, you know, they're not in the room. They don't
They're
necessarily
not in the
know,
room.
they're not interviewing,
Yeah.
you and saying, "Hey, how many guests are you having over?
Yeah.
And what will the lighting situation be? And what are you serving? And how long will the event be? How long will you be entertaining?" And um, when you have, you know, a human being that's connecting with you to gather that information, it helps to kind of personalize and tailor and customize, um, so that you feel a bit more, I don't know, to me it feels a bit safe. I think we all kind of want to feel safe right now. We
Yeah.
want to feel cared for.
Yes. Do you also make adjustments in the moment? Like, for
In
example,
the moment.
you've curated songs that you think are going to work, and then the mood of the audience, or there you see that they're responding to one thing more than another, then you make an adjustment. So
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. I think one of my favorite parts of the job is that I never know what to expect. So we show up prepared, we show up knowing, what the music preferences are, and, what the demographic is, and what generally gets people going, and what generally helps people to calm down when, they need to sit down and
Yeah.
eat, or but things change. Like, what do they say? We plan and God laughs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
if that were ever true, it's
Yeah.
true now. So absolutely, we're always pivoting and always kind of sussing out what's happening in front of us so that we can respond. It's more of a
Yeah.
it's literally a dance. So, do we need to dip right now? No, not yet. We're gonna, go in this direction. Okay, now that's done. Let's try this, and then we'll get back on our path. So it's really cool.
It's really
Oh,
cool.
there's our website.
There's your website, and it helps that you have a huge repertoire to pull from, right? You know,
Yes.
yeah, like
The
if you only know 20 songs, you don't have that many options, but I think you're probably in the thousands, right?
Yes, that's what years and years of playing music will do, is it will stretch you and give you the room to learn more music than you ever thought your brain could hold.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I'm
was
really proud
looking.
of this website. It looks good, if I may
It
say
does
so
look
myself.
it does look good, and I'm not sure what, there was a page here with, yeah. No, I really think the website and your messaging, the whole experience, I think it's great.
Thank you.
Well, here's
Thank
a
you.
pretty good explanation of some of the ideas behind it, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything we do is tailored. And it's time consuming, because every event has its own DNA. So, I think that that's something that is kind of, sometimes it can be a challenge to communicate to clients that, listen, we're taking the time to literally fine tune everything for your specific event. No playlist is the same. And that's reflected in our pricing as well. And then I think that over time, when they see how much effort and energy and attention to detail that we put into what we do, it's definitely a qualifier, and it helps us, most of our business comes from word of mouth. And I think that's the best advertising is word of mouth. And so we're
Yeah.
really, really grateful for our customers who trust us and bring their friends to us.
Yeah.
And we get to keep doing what we do, what we love to do.
What do you love to do? And if I understand correctly, you have now in the Los Angeles area, you have a a group of musicians, really top level musicians, and
Absolutely.
you also can adjust according to the venue. You might have smaller venue with a few people, or bring everybody. So
That's right. That's right. I
yeah,
call us a convertible band because,
yeah,
if you want, it depends on what the event calls for, like you said. And so, sometimes we may have a solo musician, a solo acoustic guitarist. And then other times, not since the pandemic, although I have seen some companies do this, but we can go up to a 20-piece orchestra. So
yes,
we definitely assess all of the specs, and then I make a recommendation for configuration once I have all the information that I need to make that recommendation.
yeah. No, it's fabulous.
Thank
So
you.
sometime when we're down the neighborhood, we'll have to go for coffee or something.
I would love
Yeah,
that. I would
yeah,
absolutely love that.
yeah. Bonnie's siblings are in Burbank and Sunland. So
That's right next door to us.
yeah, there you go. So that'd be
I'd
fabulous.
love that. I'd love
Maybe
that. Do you guys plan on being in California much longer?
I think we have to head. I think we have to be back into Canada in March, but we'll be here for
Okay,
the next for January and February.
nice.
And we have a friend who's lives in the Seattle area. She will be down in Irvine, I think it is, and
Oh,
we'll probably
nice.
meet up with her. And we've got some people in San Diego want to go have lunch with too. So
Oh, nice. I
yeah,
love
yeah,
San Diego. I love Seattle. I don't know if I've ever been to Irvine. I know my partner has,
yeah.
but I don't think it's too far from here.
No. And I think San Diego probably has the best consistent weather
I
in
hear that.
America.
I hear
Yeah,
that.
because it doesn't get outrageously hot, doesn't get too cold. Um, yeah, there are no alligators. That's a selling feature for us. Only in the zoo.
Oh gosh. Yeah, San Diego is beautiful. We went, I
Yeah.
think, 2 or 3 years ago, we went to SeaWorld and
Okay.
had
Yeah.
a great time. Great time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful city and lots of really nice things to see. So our
Great.
mission is to try to stay between the story van. We try to keep it between the alligator line and the snow line, right? Yeah, so
Ah,
we drift north and south according to the weather. So
got
our
it.
style got a bit cramped because of the border was closed for 2 years, so we couldn't escape the snow line. Well, we went to Bowen Island on the west coast, which is
Okay.
pretty wet. We avoided the snow pretty much, but it's most of Canada you can't avoid the snow.
Oh, yeah, I talked to someone last week, and she was on Vancouver Island? Is
Yes,
that what
yeah,
it's called?
yeah,
And, the entire interview, she was in this huge jacket, and she's
yeah,
indoors, but she's like, "I just I the cold, I feel like it's, like, set into my bones," and she turned the camera out to the
yes,
outdoors, and it was the most beautiful snowy setting, but I was
yeah,
like, "Congratulations, keep that over there."
yeah. Well, the whole normally it's not that cold, but there's been an unusual cold snap where
Ah,
places have it's been like 10 or 15 degrees colder than usual and for longer,
yeah,
which is unusual. Like in I grew up in the Vancouver area, and some years we might not even get snow hardly at all, maybe a couple of dustings of snow. And then
mhm,
once in a while you get a huge dump, like 2 or 3 feet. And then about 15 years ago, they had 6 weeks of really cold weather. And that right now, they're in the middle of some pretty cold stuff, like unseasonably cold, 10
ugh,
degrees colder than usual. So So
Well, I am
we're,
grateful that we're both in California.
yeah, we're quite happy we're in California. So we used to,
Sorry, cold places.
yeah. So we used to. Well, one time we were traveling around and we were posting photos of food and stuff. And one of our friends said, "Stop! Enough with the food already. Show some scenery." And so we showed. I think San Diego is beautiful, sunny and stuff, and it was in the middle of deep freeze in Canada. And somebody says, "No, no,
Oh,
go back to the
go
food."
back to the food.
So, yeah, but those the storms last week were pretty intense. Like you were okay, but not too far from Los Angeles. So yeah, were evacuated because of the rains and the hills got massive amounts of snow. So so it's
Yeah, it's been
yeah,
crazy. I mean, here it's been cold and rainy, and I just was not expecting that at all. But I feel
yeah.
like, again, being a native Chicagoan, I'd take the rain and 60 degrees and rain over a Chicago
Ex-
winter any day.
Exposed flesh freezes in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Although this year, I think it was warmer and much sunnier on Christmas Day in
Yes.
Chicago than it
Yeah.
was here. And it
Yeah.
was cold and dark and rainy here. And my sister's like, "Hi, I didn't have to
Yeah.
wear a jacket out today." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh."
That happens sometimes. I People from we know some people in North Carolina and they say it's been unseasonably warm in the last week or so too.
Mm.
Quite a bit warmer than usual.
Mhm, mhm.
But it's been a weird year for weather for
It
sure.
has been,
Yeah,
it has
with the
been.
tornadoes and that, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're pretty blessed that we're doing okay down here, really.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
And and
I
and
agree.
even with all the chaos that happened in British Columbia, very few people were hurt, and everybody I know it was perfectly fine.
That
So
is such great news.
yeah,
That's always good news when people are okay, when those kinds of things that are out of our control take
yeah,
place.
and people stepped in to help people who were evacuated. Provide a place for
That's
them to stay, and yeah, things good. Yeah,
that's heartwarming.
yeah,
Humanity, gotta love it.
humanity. Yeah. Anyway, on that note, a warm and sunny note from Southern California. So,
Yes, coming
anyway,
live from sunny
yeah,
California.
yeah. Well, thank you very much for talking with me today.
Thank
It's been great.
you. This was
Yeah,
lovely, and I appreciate you taking the time to learn about Honey and Vinyl and Sonic
yeah.
Sommelier, and please share with all your friends.
Will do. Yeah, I have a few of my musician friends who appreciate the interview, and so
Amazing.
I'll send it off if they don't find it automatically. All right.
Well, then I will end with this, Greg. See
Okay.
you later, alligator.
See you later, alligator. So
Thanks so
we
much.
actually don't mind the alligators. We just don't like the weather where they're at.
Ah,
It's too
it's
humid,
it's the
right?
weather, not the alligators.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. Though we're
Thanks so
staying trying to stay away from the sharp end of the alligator too, though.
much. That's important.
Yes,
You kind of want to stay away from the sharp end of anything, but
that's right.
definitely
Yes. Yeah.
alligator.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Take care.
Take
Tell
care.
Bonnie I said hi.
Yeah, we'll do.
Bye bye.
Bye.